we're going to finish up the series Transformed out of the book of Philemon. Like I say every time, depends on what side of the interstate you live on. It's Philemon or Philemon. Amen. But I guess I live on the right side because it's Philemon. But, amen. But we're going to read some scriptures here. I forgot how many I'm going to read. I think I'm starting at verse 4. Is that what I got up there? What I got up there? Verse 10. Okay. Verse 10 through whenever I decide to stop. Amen. I honestly forgot how many I was going to read. Book of Philemon, verse number 10. I beseech thee for my son Onesimus, whom I have begotten in my bonds, which in time past to thee, or in time past was to thee unprofitable, but now profitable to thee and to me, whom I have sent again. Thou therefore received him, that is, mine own bowels, or my own heart. Verse 13 says, whom I would have retained with me, that in thy stead he might have ministered unto me in the bonds of the gospel. But without thy mind would I do nothing, that thy benefit should not be, as it were, of necessity, but willingly. For perhaps he therefore departed for a season, that thou shouldest receive him forever. Not now as a servant, but above a servant, a brother beloved, especially to me, but how much more unto thee, both in the flesh and in the Lord. If thou count me therefore a partner, receive him as myself. If he hath wronged thee, or oweth thee aught, put that on mine account. I, Paul, have written it with my own hand. I will repay. Albeit I do not say to thee how thou owest unto me thine own self besides. Yea, brother, let me have joy of thee in the Lord. Refresh my bowels in the Lord. And tonight we're going to finish, like I said, the last part of this Transform series, and the title of this tonight is Legacy. Legacy of souls in heaven. Legacy of souls in heaven. This picture that's behind me is a picture from our Easter service this past year. There is many people standing in that service that have not been back to church since then. Some, the last time they was here before then was Easter. Souls that we need to be concentrating on. That we need to be thinking about. Sometimes we don't think about them, if we be honest, because they live with us. And we see the other side of it being a soul that needs to get to heaven. Tonight we're going to talk about the legacy of souls in heaven. And Sister Melissa's already stood and already claimed her family, her children, her husband, and others. In Christ, we have a transformed legacy, an eternal legacy of souls that we bring to Jesus. Tony Campolo, Christian sociologist of research, did a project once with people over the age of 90. And the interviewers asked these very elderly people one question. It says, as you look back on your life, What do you wish you had done differently? And out of the survey that was conducted, the project or the survey that was conducted, there were 3 questions that stood out, that served as the majority. Number 1, when asked these of over the age of 90, the first thing they said that they would do differently, number 1, is they wish they had taken more risk. Number 2, they wish they had spent more time in reflection. And number 3, they wish they had done more to leave a legacy. Something to pass on to the next generation. Stephen Covey writes in one of his books that the purpose of human life can be summed up in 4 essential points. And all of them beginning with the letter L. The first one is to live. The second is to love. The third is to learn. And the fourth is to leave a legacy. To leave a legacy. And it's that matter of a legacy or leaving a legacy that should really concern us tonight. And one of the things that the Lord changes in us when we're saved is our legacy, or it should be our legacy. Because He calls us to leave an everlasting legacy. And if we do not leave that legacy, then ultimately the most important change in us is left undone. So what does one do to change one's legacy? And I want to talk about 3 things tonight that can help change our legacy, or 3 things we need to do to change our legacy. And the first one is this, is to share God's changing power with others. To share His changing power with others. You see, we get comfortable in just coming to church. We get comfortable in being home and believing that we're safe. But how often do we really think about our lost family? How often are we really concerned about them? Are we just concerned when we hear a preacher begin to preach about the lost souls? Because if we're wanting to leave a legacy of souls in heaven, we've got to start sharing God's changing power with others, and that includes our family. In verse 10, the Bible tells us that we just read, I beseech thee. In other words, Paul is appealing to Philemon for my son Onesimus. And Paul lets him know that he became his son. He adopted him while he was in prison. And our most important legacy is not what many think, but it's not a legacy of dollars. It's not a legacy of investments in a wheel, nor is it even just a legacy of offspring. But it's a legacy of transformed lives, and eternal legacy of people who will live eternally in heaven because of our efforts. Now, I know everyone is not called to, or I know everyone is called to your own specific call in ministry, but I believe that everyone, that in the heart of every Christian beats that desire to be where the action is. And that action is reaching the lost. It may not be in a large area with a lot of people, or it may be just down an outreach into the inner city, or maybe it's just in your own living room. But if it's none of the above that I just mentioned, then we need to ask ourselves, what is the problem? Because let me tell you, if we cannot point to someone in the recent past who came to Jesus, whose life was changed, and wouldn't have without our effort and our call to ministry, then I hope tonight we are in deep prayer, that we're in deep fasting, And we're asking the Lord, what's wrong with our life? Because our legacy to leave behind as a Christian is a legacy of souls in heaven. I'm convinced that every Christian is called to duty in the front line of soul winning service. And I think that there are people that you are strategically placed with to bring to Jesus that neither I nor the person sitting to the left or the right of you would ever be able to reach. So it's up to each one of us. We have to look in the mirror and say, it's up to me to show people God's changing power, to share God's changing power with them. If I plan on leaving a legacy of souls in heaven, it's up to you. It's up to me. There's people that you're going to be able to reach that I cannot, that I may never. So the first thing we need to do in leaving a legacy of souls in heaven is, number one, we need to share God's changing power with them. We're not shy. We're not bashful. We're not. We can use that excuse, but if you remember, I preached a message several years, when God disproves your excuse. Those excuses will be disproved by God. We're not shy. We're not bashful. We'll talk about anything and everything. Amen. But when it comes to God, why are we so reserved? Are we not worried about the legacy of souls that we are to leave in heaven? Jesus. The second thing is to believe that God can and does change others. Believe that he can and believe that he does. He does change others. In verse number 11, we find that Paul is speaking again to Timothy, and he's talking about Onesimus, the son he just adopted while he was in prison. And he says, you know what? You used to think he was useless. That's what he was. He was useless, but now he's become useful both to you and to me. You see, Paul understood that God could change people because he stood as living proof that God could take a murderer, one who arrested and killed Christians, and has now turned him into an apostle sharing Jesus all over the world. And you should know it too if you trusted in him for salvation, because he took you, a useless you, and made a useful you out of you. And now he's asking us to take our usefulness to give to others, to make others useful. That's Paul was trying to tell this to Philemon. Don't continue to look at him as being useless. But now he's useful. And to do that, you've got to believe in a God who changes people, who turns drug addicts into useful people, who turns alcoholics into useful people, and more importantly, he can take the lost and now they're saved because he took your uselessness, made you useful, and now you becoming to leave a legacy of souls in heaven.
Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Thank you, Jesus.
If every time you see somebody get saved, and you've got the rolling around in the back of your mind, well, we'll see how long it lasts, then I'm worried about you. I'm worried because it must be that God has not really transformed you. Because you apparently have not really experienced the touch of the Master's hand. You see, we've got to get excited at seeing God's grace get a hold of people. And when we get excited about seeing God's grace get a hold of people, then we got to get a burning desire to be close to the action where God is transforming lives. Amen. And I'm not doing this to get a hand clap. I'm not doing this to get you hyped up or pumped up. But I believe in the very near future that we're going to become known as a place that lives can be transformed we're going to be that way. We've got to be willing to put ourselves out there and on the line. And we must believe that God can and will change people. I know He can. He's changed me. I know there's people out there that live the past that's worse than mine. But all I can tell you about is my past. I was on my way to a jail. I was on my way to hell. But God changed me. God changed me from waking up every morning to want a cigarette and a beer as soon as I opened my eyes. Now I can wake up and know, Sister Lou, that I'm on my way to heaven. That God took a drunk. That God took a drug addict. That God took an alcoholic and other bad things, and He changed me. Now I am to go out and help others change. We've got to share God's changing power with others, and we got to believe that God can and does change others. As I mentioned last week or whenever it was, whenever we begin to question somebody's salvation, we're not questioning them. We're questioning whether or not the blood of Jesus can wash and cleanse all sins away. Each and every one of us knows somebody that's been in and out of church and in and out of church and in and out of church. And I pray they would walk in these doors now and they would come down and make things right. I'm going to get excited. I'm going to get pumped up. I'm not going to think about what they've done in the past. How many times they walked away. Because I got something on the inside of me that says I need to begin to start today with leaving a legacy of souls in heaven. And the third thing is we got to take a chance on others. Again, in verse 11, he says he was useless to you, but now he's become useful to both you and me. To have a changed legacy, you've got to be willing to put yourself on the line for others and trust in the change God is working in them. We've all been burnt. We all have. Doesn't change the fact that God saved a wretch like me and that God can change a wretch like them. Doesn't change the fact that God saved an alcoholic, that He can save another alcoholic, that He can save another drug addict, that He can save those that we have now deemed useless. But He's wanting to turn things around, that we no longer see them as useless, as Paul no longer sees Onesimus as he reached out to Philemon. He's not useless anymore. He's useful in church. That's where we got to change our mindset, that no longer is anybody considered useless, but they're useful and they can be even gratefully used in the kingdom of God. Paul put his own resources out there and his own reputation on the line for somebody that was worthless, for a runaway slave named Onesimus that was deemed to be worthless, pleading with Philemon to take him back. And you know, we need to take a risk on others. Because why? Because Jesus laid Himself on the line for us. And our due service to Him is to pass on that legacy of giving to others, that legacy of winning others to the Lord. Amen. It's our duty. How many times have we looked at people and thought, man, they're hopeless? How many times have we looked at somebody, oh, they've gone too far? Have we soon forgotten how far we went toward the pits of hell, and God reached down and took someone we thought was gone too far, someone that was useless, and turned them around? If we can't see that, then we have not truly been transformed by the blood of Jesus. We have to turn things around. We have to have the faith that Sister Melissa does when she stood and made that claim. Made that claim by faith. And I'm not saying nobody else is in here, but just because she mentioned that tonight, we've got to get up. Just like Brother Francois mentioned Sunday, when we walk into a place, we need to claim it.
That's right.
When we walk back home tonight, we need to claim our family. Not only those that are under our house or under our roof, but those that are living in other homes. We need to begin to claim. And I'm not talking about the name it and claim it job, because you can name it and claim it all day long. But if you don't have faith to back it, if you got faith to back it, I'm here to tell you today that sooner rather than later that we will see families begin to walk into the church of God and begin to turn their lives around. And we can say then that we have a legacy of souls. Don't you want to have your family? Don't you want to have your friends dancing around the throne of glory? Don't you want to have them walking those streets of gold, hanging out by the river, the clear river of life? Don't you want that to be a part of your legacy? Leaving a legacy of souls in heaven. We've got to change. I want to read this story. It's a true story of an Englishman who in his early years had lived a sort of rags to riches life. And by hard work, he had transformed himself from a poor kid growing up in the mean streets of London into a celebrated writer. At this particular time in his life, he found himself hard up against a sort of a writer's block. And no longer did he feel inspired. It was as though his creativity has been turned off. He was drowning in debt, and his publisher kept demanding the next long-promised manuscript. And the writer began to fear that maybe his life was coming full circle. That now his own children might one day experience the sort of poverty that he had known as a young man. So the author took to walking the streets of London. And there he began to notice things. In particular, he noticed the urban squalor, the poor houses, the children working long hours as factory workers, street vendors, and chimney sweeps. His thoughts then turned to human greed and the terrible damage that a self-centered outlook on life can inflict on so many. Yes. At long last, a story began to emerge. When words finally found their way onto paper, the latest novel of Charles Dickens proved to be not nearly so long as most of his others, but it was destined to become his best loved work. And the little novel called A Christmas Carol tells a story of an old miser named Ebenezer Scrooge, who discovers just before it's too late for him what a joy it is to leave a legacy. A legacy of lost souls in heaven. I'm going to ask you to stand tonight. Tonight, God is calling us to leave a better legacy than just a happy, cheerful Christmas story. Tonight he's calling us to invest our lives in others. He's calling us to invest our life in others, to leave a legacy that we can bring with us. A legacy of souls in heaven. I know it's Wednesday, but I want to ask you tonight, how well is your legacy? How well is your legacy? If tonight you believe with all your heart there's much room for improvement, I'm going to ask if you would come and kneel at these altars or stand and speak to God tonight to help you improve your legacy. To help me look at my lost family, my lost friends, my lost loved ones in a whole different way. That I can start tonight and leave in a legacy of souls in heaven.